Hey, welcome back to Briefing with the Chief. This is a quick Chiefs brief, and we're going to talk about the SAVE Act today, which is in the news. It was passed in the House and is now up to the Senate for consideration. And there's a lot of drama back and forth on this between Republicans and Democrats, which is surprising because both parties have talked about how this election was stolen and that election was stolen. You would think an election integrity bill would be supported by both parties, and to be clear, the rank and file of both parties do support it. It is the Democratic leadership that is resisting it to the point where they're calling it Jim Crow 2.0, hearkening back to the laws that were used to suppress the vote in the South of Black Americans, and which I just don't think this bill is that, and I want to get into that. And so before I get into what the actual bill is, let's hear what our leaders have to say about it. Let's start with Speaker Johnson.
Good evening, everybody. This is a very important night on the House floor. House Republicans tonight stood with the overwhelming majority of Americans who demand secure elections. Standing with me are some of the champions of this cause in the House and some of the leaders outside our chamber who've been working on this issue to ensure this integrity for quite some time. And this is a big achievement tonight. By voting for the Save America Act, House Republicans did exactly what the American people sent us here to do. It's promises made, promises kept. Ensuring the integrity of elections is an essential issue. It's essential to maintaining our constitutional republic, and everybody in this country seems to understand and agree to that. This is about a 90-10 issue in the polling, because all that we've done tonight in this simple piece of legislation is apply common sense. All this Save America Act does is it enhances the SAVE Act, which you've already passed twice before, which says that you have to have proof of citizenship before you register to vote in federal elections. The law already provides for that, but we need to ensure that it's enforced. And the second part of it, what we added tonight and what is part of the Save America Act is the second piece, the very common sense requirement that you have a photo ID if you're going to vote. So that's it. That's what the bill does. Proof of citizenship and photo ID to vote. Everyone in the country understands the necessity of that, understands how simple it is and how important it is. And the only people that oppose it are people who want to cheat our system, who want to participate in our elections illegally, unlawfully. And that's not fair to the American people and the citizens of this country. And so we had only one House Democrat participate with us tonight. This has become a bitter partisan fight, and it's madness to us. We can't quite understand what the rationale is for opposing a free and fair election. But they're going to have to explain this to the people. They're going to have a hard time doing that. Now, this bill, having passed the House, will now go to the Senate. And we are encouraging all of our Senate Republican colleagues who believe in this just as we do to try to get this thing through the system, to pass it there. And we're hoping that some Democrats in the Senate will come to their senses and do the right thing for the people. Otherwise, they got a lot of explaining to do, as we say down in the South. This is something that is overdue. It's something that's common sense. It's something that comports with what the American people want. And there's really just one question that would linger over all this now. Will Senate Democrats continue to cater to their extreme left-wing base, or are they going to finally join the overwhelming majority of Americans on this common sense reform? But I'll tell you this, once again, Republicans have demonstrated that we are the party of common sense. We are the party that's delivering exactly what the American people sent us here to do, and we will continue that. Got a lot of champions that you can hear from here shortly before we take a few questions, and I'm going to yield first to Chairman Brian Stile, who has worked really hard on this issue. Where is he?
Okay, that's Speaker Johnson talking about the SAVE Act. I should say this is the act is to Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act. That's what this is all about, and he's right. He said it's a 90-10 issue. What he means is 90% of Americans support it and 10% oppose. Well, the numbers I had is 83-17, so 83%. But the interesting thing is 70% of the rank and file Democrats support it. So this is where I don't, he said it's a partisan issue, and I actually don't see it that way. It is a Democratic leadership has an issue with it, not necessarily rank and file Democrats, which is, and so it's shocking to me that the leadership has taken the position they're going to take. But let's listen to Chuck Schumer and hear his take on the SAFE Act.
About 83% of the American people, including majority Democrats, support voter ID laws.
Yeah, the voter ID laws that, first, each state can have its own voter ID laws, and some do and some don't. But secondly, what they are proposing in this so-called SAVE Act is like Jim Crow 2.0. They make it so hard to get any kind of voter ID that more than 20 million legitimate people, mainly poorer people and people of color, will not be able to vote under this law. We will not let it pass in the Senate. We are fighting it tooth and nail. It's an outrageous proposal that is, that shows the sort of political bias of the MAGA right. They don't want poor people to vote. They don't want people of color to vote because they often don't vote for them.
This is absolute nonsense. He calls it a right-wing MAGA. This is nonsense. You heard. Right there as CNN, 83% of Americans support it. 70%, 71% of Democratic support it. So it's not a right wing. This is a common sense issue, and by labeling it as right wing, they hope to defeat it. But let's talk about what it really is. And keep in mind, this is not the 1960s. This is a time when everybody needs some form of ID to get anything done. You go in the store to cash a check, you use a credit card, you need ID to do just about anything in the United States today. So this is not the 1960s. In fact, what are we talking about? This is 60 years, 65 years later. Times have changed. This is not Jim Crow, but let's talk about the key provisions. So, proof of citizenship amends the National Voter Registration Act and requires individuals to provide documentation such as a passport, a birth certificate, or naturalization citizens certificate to register for federal elections. So this is federal elections. That all seems pretty reasonable. You can get your birth certificate from the county that you were born in. You can get a passport at any time. It wasn't that hard to get a passport. I have a passport. In fact, many Americans have a passport. Voter ID requirements implements a strict national photo ID requirement for casting a ballot in federal election. Now, we're going to get into voter ID around the country here in a minute, and you can see that this is not a radical premise, that this is pretty much done in most states in the United States already at the state level. He referenced that. So why would it be a violation? Why would it be Jim Crow 2.0? Because that would have been a violation of a person's voting rights. But yet many states have it. So what that means is it's gone through the test, the constitutional test, because no doubt they were challenged in those states, and it passed constitutional muster. So why would this be a problem? Let's see, voter roll maintenance. Now this is the one that they didn't talk about, but it's part of the act. Mandates that states regularly cross-reference voter rolls and with federal databases like DHS and Social Security to identify and remove non-citizens. So purging the rolls of non-citizens, I would assume, and also people who had passed away. In-person registration effectively limits mail-in and online registration by requiring citizenship documentation to be presented in person. So I imagine the thing about it is the states still have a right to implement this law based upon how they see fit, right? The states still, as they do now, it is in the Constitution, the states will manage the elections. And this is why they're able to, why we have different rules all over the place. And this just kind of codifies voter ID rules as well as other issues nationally. And I came across a report. It's from the National Conference for State Legislatures that shows who has voter ID. And now let's look at the map, and it'll be very interesting. Let's keep this up for a while. So if you see the dark colored states, what the dark colored states indicate is people who have very strict voter identification. And you see a lot of them are down south, and we got a couple in the Midwest. Looks like Ohio's got one, Indiana, and then heaven forbid, we got is that Wisconsin. So we have some blue states or purple states that have them as well. I think that's New Hampshire up there in the corner. And so we have a variety of states that have this very strict, have to have a photo ID, government ID with a picture kind of thing. And then you look at the other states that have less strict voter ID, like if you can come with a, your utility bill or something like that, that demonstrates that you live at this particular address, and they'll take that. And the other part of this map is it also looks at if you don't have ID when you're casting the vote, do they have some way to remedy or cure your vote? You can cast your vote, and do they have some remedy? Now, the stricter states generally don't have those remedies, but the other states that are lighter shaded do have some form of remedy for that. But the interesting thing about this map is that the lightest shade in this map indicates states that have no form of voter ID, no form. And in fact, in California, you can see on the West Coast there, you can't even ask for ID. It's against the law to ask for ID. But if you look at this map, it's curious. It's curious that most of the places that do not have voter ID are Democratic strongholds. These are the bluest of the blue states. You look at the Eastern Seaboard, mostly Democratic, do not have voter ID. You look at Illinois, right there in the middle, does not have voter ID. Minnesota, that's been in the news a lot with all the immigration stuff, does not have voter ID. And you look down there in the west, this is right next to Texas, that's New Mexico. And then you look on the west coast, California and Oregon, two very deep blue states. Now it looks like they got Nevada in there as well, but two very deep blue states that do not require voter ID. So why would they want to preserve this in these states? Now, Schumer is implying that this is a states' rights issue, and I'm not saying there's cheating, and I'm not saying that there wasn't cheating. I'm just saying it is curious that these blue states are Democratic strongholds, and they do not have voter ID, which is actually contrary to what the Democrat rank and file want. And keep this in mind, Joe Biden won with this type of map. So this isn't about voter suppression and staying out of power. He won with this kind of map. So what is it? And they said over and over again, well, there was no cheating under Joe Biden. Everything was fine. If there's no cheating, then what's the problem with voter ID? You can't say that there's no problem, because if there's no problem, then what's the problem? If the people who voted in the election were all legitimate voters, why would you have a problem with this? Is really, really my point. And this is a movement that's going across the country. I really think we're going to see some form of voter ID coming at the federal level, but it might take a little while. I'm not confident it's going to get out the Senate, but here in California, we got a voter initiative. That's right. We got a proposition that's going to be on the ballot in 2016. And I just thought I would show the support for it here in California. 60% support voter ID for casting a ballot in California. 68% support it. Those are big numbers, and 79% support citizen verification for voting in California. Now they got the 1.3 million signatures needed to put it on the 2026 ballot. I'm confident, given the support from both the right, the left, and independents. I mean, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. This will likely pass, and it'll probably eventually end up in the Supreme Court, because I'm sure that there'll be some lawsuits that were filed against it. But that's it for today. This SAVE Act is hot, and it's a hot topic these days. You should figure out where you are at with it. I thank you for joining me here in Briefing with the Chief for this quick brief, and we'll see you next week for another show. Take care.
Thank you.